This podcast is rated E for everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Nifty Ninty. I am your host, Matt Tuna Turner, and this is the podcast where we run down everything Nintendo every single week. I've got another great show for you guys this week. We are going to talk a little bit about the Nintendo Switch online service. A little speculation, a little bit what we know. We're only about a month out, so we're going to talk about that. I've also got a game review for you guys, and of course, before all that, we'll run down this week's new releases and a few headlines. So, why don't we get right into it with this week's new releases? As is usual with the Nintendo Switch, this week sees a plethora of Ninty titles. Coming up first, we have the game based on true historical events, 1979 Revolution Black Friday, followed by Crush Your Enemies, Cycle 28, another game called Ikimo, Splinters of the Dark Shard, Flat Heroes, Guns, Gore, and Cannoli, number 2. We have a 2D action-adventure game, Iconoclasts, another Johnny Turbo arcade game, Shootout, which I could have swore came out a couple weeks ago, so curious why we're seeing it again. There's also a neat-looking block puzzle game called Kensho, followed by Not a Hero, Super Snazzy Edition. We have another puzzle game, this one a little more well-known, Picross 2. Picross is very popular with a lot of you, so I bet you this will be one of the top sellers on the eShop this week. Also, Road to Valhalla. We have a Souls-like 2D platform called Salt and Sanctuary. This one is actually probably the standout for the Ninties this week. If you're thinking you would like a Metroidvania style game, but with punishing difficulty, Salt and Sanctuary is definitely for you. Also, we have State of Anarchy, Masters of Mayhem. And finally, on the Nindy front, The Inner World. In terms of packaged goods this week, we've got a game called Titan Quest. Also, Nicalis. I wasn't aware that's how you pronounce it. I thought it was Nicholas, but it is pronounced Nicalis. Released a remake of Code Princess EX, which is a 2D brawler. But with this game, you have the ability to kind of switch lanes. So you can kind of go deeper into the map and then come closer to the screen, if that makes sense. So it's not like your Final Fight or your Battletoads. You're actually able to like switch lanes, so to speak, which kind of a neat concept. Not to mention boob physics. And probably the biggest game this week was for the 3DS, actually, if you'll believe it, and that is Wario Ware Gold. Wario! Wario Ware Gold is a collection of many of the series' best micro games. This game is perfect on the go, so the 3DS makes perfect sense. People often wonder why this wouldn't come to the Switch. Well, it is a touchscreen heavy game. Not only that, I think it plays better on the 3DS. There is no stylus for the Switch, so if you're like me, your fat fingers would definitely get in the way of gameplay. Alright, well that's it for the releases this week. There weren't as many as there have been in the past, however, there were quite a few notable ones. Wario Ware Gold, also Salt and Sanctuary, if you are looking for a good digital title, one that is hard, kind of like Metroidvania, definitely would pick up Salt and Sanctuary. Code Princess EX also looks like a lot of fun. Let's get on to this week's news and headlines. This week's leading story, and I think the only story this week that doesn't have to do with corporate news. Nintendo has announced a new Labo Toy-Con set. This is the vehicle set and is coming to the Nintendo Labo party of games. The Nintendo Labo vehicle kit launches on September 14th and comes with all the fun cardboard pieces you need to build things like a car, a submarine, a plane, and probably a little bit more. The nice thing about Labo is really your imagination is the only limit. And if that wasn't enough, there is a third-party developer out there that has created a cardboard coating spray so that when you create your wonderful creations with Labo, you can use an adhesive spray to keep it all together. If you guys would like more info on that adhesive spray, I will add a link to the description below on the YouTube video. Recently, Nintendo held their quarterly investors conference, so we got a lot of corporate news this past week. There were a few nuggets, the most notable being that Nintendo profits are up despite slowing Switch sales. The Switch may have been selling like hotcakes and has definitely helped Nintendo profits grow, but apparently Switch sales themselves had slowed a little bit. But this was offset by a few notable titles. Those games were Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, which is a Wii U remake, and another Wii U remake is helping bolster Switch sales, and that is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. We also got some lifetime sales numbers from these investor calls. So, those are for the Nintendo Switch. They have sold through their first fiscal year 19,067 units, and that's hardware. In terms of software, 86.93 million units. We also got some lifetime sales data for the Nintendo 3DS family of systems. In terms of hardware, they have sold 72.89 million units. That is a lot of 3DSs. This is dwarfed by their software sales, 367.84 million units, if you believe it. That's insane, especially compared to the Wii U, which over the course of its entire lifetime, 13.56 million hardware units and 102.28 million software units. Of course, we also have to compare this with Nintendo's probably best-selling console, and that is the Wii. Do you think the Switch will make pace with the Wii? We'll find out. The Wii sold over the course of its lifetime 101.63 million units. That is a lot of Wiis. The Switch was on pace to sell 20 million units in its first fiscal year. Didn't quite make it, so investors got a little shaky and stocks dropped, which is kind of sad, but that is what it is. I imagine come this fall, especially with Switch Online Service and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, they are going to see a huge uptick in Switch sales. Moving right along, this month we have the annual Gamescom. Nintendo has announced their Gamescom lineup. You can probably guess that Super Smash Bros. Ultimate will be on hand. We'll also be able to see a little bit of Super Mario Party, and the rest of the lineup includes FIFA 19, that pretty cool Starlink game Battle for Atlas, Killer Queen Black, Dragon Ball FighterZ, and the Dark Souls remastered game. Oh, and Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes. Nintendo will also release certain gameplay videos of titles such as the new Xenoblade 2 DLC and the Daemon X Machina game, which we got to see for the first time at E3, and it looks pretty cool. So Gamescom runs in Cologne, Germany from August 21st to 25th. The final piece of news, and probably the most interesting from this past week, comes from the folks at NDP. If you aren't aware of who they are, they track sales figures across all major platforms that include software and hardware. And in the year 2018, yes, the year 2018, the Nintendo Entertainment System is the most popular selling console. The Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, I don't know why I'm having trouble saying that. System. The NES Mini was the hottest selling console for the month of June. I know it's August now, but the NPD takes a little while to release the numbers, so we're just getting this now. But still, for the month of June 2018, a console from the 80s was the hottest selling console of the month, which is pretty cool. So good for Nintendo. So that's it for the news. Next, we will move on to questions. Again, no questions, but that's fine. Hopefully, as more people subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, I will receive more questions. If you would like to ask a question, please do find me on YouTube. You can leave a comment in the video comments below, or you can find me on Twitter. I have a new Twitter handle. It is tunaent_official. That is spelled number 2 NAENT_official. And that's my Twitter handle, tunaent underscore official. So if you'd like to ask a question or get involved in some of the polls and other things that I do on Twitter, please go ahead and give me a follow. Would really appreciate it. Anyways, I digress. On to questions. I have none. So, as I asked last week, I will ask again. I have the Mega Man X Legacy Collection. Is it Mega Man X Legacy? It's not. It's just the Mega Man X Collection. Anyways, I bought Collection 1 and 2 of Mega Man X, and as I did with the Mega Man Legacy Collection, I will ask you guys the same thing. Which of these games would you like me to play first? You let me know, either in the comments below or on Twitter, and I will review that game for you guys. I will note that the only two games in that franchise I have played are Mega Man X and Mega Man X2. So if you want to see or help me to play something new, then let me know. Alright, so we're a little bit over a month away from the launch of the Nintendo Switch online service. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of talk a little bit about speculation, what we might see, what kind of rumors are out there, what do we know already, that kind of thing. So why don't we start with what we know already. We know it launches in September. We know that it's going to be about 20 USD a month. Sorry, 20 USD a year, which is really cheap compared to PlayStation and Xbox Live, which are, I know for Xbox it's about $60 a year USD. I don't know what the PlayStation Plus costs. So in terms of its counterparts, very cheap. We also know that it uses a mobile app for things like game chat. And we also know that we are getting 20 NES remastered games, which will include some form of online functionality. Things like online multiplayer, leaderboards, spectating, that sort of thing. Which is kind of cool, and I assume replaces the virtual console to some extent. Speaking of those games, Nintendo did say that they will be launching 20 of them alongside the Nintendo Switch online service, but they have only told us about half of them. And those half are soccer, tennis, Donkey Kong, Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers, Balloon Fight, Ice Climber, Dr. Mario, The Legend of Zelda, and of course Super Mario Brothers 3. All these games will be classic NES games with added online functionality. We know what half of them are. What do you think the other half are? If you had to guess. 10 more NES classic games. Do you think they would only be first-party games? Or do you think Nintendo would be able to include some second or third-party games? Things like Mega Man, or perhaps Metal Gear, Castlevania, those types of things. That would be really, really cool if they did. I wonder if they can get the license for those things. Well, what do you think they are? I'm going to ask you guys this on my Twitter page as well. What do you think the 10 remaining NES games for Switch Online will be? I'm just going to pick 10 games at random, or at least 10 games that I would really want to see on the service coming in September. So we know that Super Mario Bros. And Super Mario Bros. 3 are coming. But what about Super Mario Bros. 2? And I'm not talking about the one that the Americas got. I'm talking about the one that we got in Japan. The one that America knows as the Lost Levels. I think that should be on there. That's one. I would like to see Mega Man 2, which should be a third-party title. I would also like to see Castlevania. One of the original Battletoads I think would be a blast. Also, I guess this is 5 if you're keeping track. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game. Not the first one, because that game is near impossible and makes no sense, but like the proper arcade game they released on the NES. I think it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. So that's 5. Another 5. I'm going to rack my brain here. DuckTales, or DuckTales 2. Actually, let's say both of them. DuckTales 1 and 2. Fantastic games, both of them. I would also like to see, let's go back to back to first party. Metroid. And for the final 2 games, gonna have to say Excite Bike and that wonderful pink blob Kirby. Kirby's First Adventure was a lot of fun on the NES from what I remember. And Excite Bike is a good time waster, and I think it'd be a lot of fun with multiplayer added and leaderboards as well. So Nintendo has stated that the classic games that they will be releasing for their service are kind of like a Netflix style subscription. So you're basically renting these games from them. You don't download them or own them. I wonder if they will release these games, not just NES, but Super Nintendo, N64, etc., as download, or at least for first-party games. Maybe not third-party games, because I know that third-party can release their own collections and put them on the eShops without sort of any problems. So for first-party games, I wonder how they're going to handle this. In the past, you're able to download games, Star Fox 64, whatever, boom, on your Wii U, not a problem. But since this is a subscription, are they going to continually add games? Are they going to put games on and remove them like Netflix does? That's kind of lame if you think about it. Like, what if you're in the middle of, I don't know, Majora's Mask, or even the first Legend of Zelda, and Nintendo decides to rip it off? What happens to your save data? It's like, oh, I've almost beaten Ganon, but too bad Nintendo said no, you can't play anymore. No game for you. No game for you. So I wonder if once you've, I don't want to say downloaded because you're technically not downloading. I mean, you're downloading, I guess, a license key. Once you've got that license key, if you get to keep it, and then do these games only work online, or can you play them offline and it'll save your stats and upload once you get to internet connection? Because the Switch is, after all, a portable console. So you'll be able to take these classic games on the go with you. So many questions, and we just don't have any answers. Nintendo, it's only a month away. Like, we want to know. I sense a Nintendo Direct coming somewhere around or after Gamescom. Maybe at Gamescom they're kind of holding things back and they're going to announce some things there. Because I know they're launching with these 20 NES games, but I'd like to see some other games. Some Super Nintendo. I'd like to see some GameCube games and, Mario Galaxy as well. That was one of my favorite games for the Wii. I'd love to be able to take that one on the go. But again, are you able to play these games offline? I have no idea. I know obviously the online functionality wouldn't work. You wouldn't be able to play multiplayer. Oh, local multiplayer maybe. That would be fun. Wonder if they'd build those into these classic games as well. Could I take my Switch on a road trip and perhaps me and my friends kind of to kill time on a bus or in the back of a car or whatever, play some Mario Brothers with each other, balloon fight, Punch Out? I guess Punch Out's only a single player game, but you know what I mean, you get my drift. Would that be possible with the Switch online service? I know that we're going to be able to play games like, Splatoon, Smash Bros, Mario Kart, FIFA, these types of things when it does launch, these big package titles, which is, a given. But what about these classic games? And while these classic games are free and part of the service, will we get kind of like the Xbox with games with Gold or PlayStation Plus members? Are we going to get exclusive games either for free or discount, like eShop coupons or something? Would we be able to download? Maybe this is how you get those games for good, is every month subscribers get, one or two free games of their choice to download and keep, as opposed to the licensing of these digital games. I wonder. Not only that, let's move away from classic games for just a minute. The Nintendo Switch online service is going to have to launch with some pretty killer games in order to get people to subscribe. I know it's a lower price point, but a lot of us are playing for free right now. So where's the incentive to buy into this subscription service? I know that in December, no, it's November when Smash launches. That's probably going to drive a lot of sales, but what have they got in September that's going to push things? I mean, FIFA probably will, but is that enough? Are they going to have a first-party title killer app that is going to launch alongside the Nintendo Switch online service? Maybe they'll bundle it with a game. Maybe in September we'll see Mario Kart 8 Deluxe bundled with some sort of Switch online coupon or something. I don't know. Because something is going to have to drive people to subscribe to these services. Because otherwise, people are just going to wait till November. I mean, I'm not. Nintendo has already got my money. They can have it. They can have my $20. Not the end of the world. But I think for the mass, like the mass, and like not your hardcore gamer. They're gonna need something to make them go, okay, I'll drop $20. And I don't think it's gonna be Splatoon. I don't think it's gonna be, games that you find on the eShop, your Nindies and those sorts of things. It's gonna have to be a Smash Bros. Or something. I mean, what does Nintendo even have in September? I know that they said there are games that are coming this year that they haven't announced yet, sorry. But what do they have in September besides FIFA to help push subscribers for the Nintendo Switch online service? What do you guys think? I mean, I'm at a complete loss. There's no way that Metroid Prime 4 would be ready. And Pokemon doesn't come out until October. So what do they have to drive it? I mean, it's really just FIFA. So I guess they're really banking on EA for this one. I assume more info is going to come somewhere around Gamescom, which is towards the third week of August, towards the end of the month. At that point, we'd be just a few weeks out from the Nintendo Switch online launch, so there's got to be a Nintendo Direct coming. Regardless when it happens, we'll be breaking down all the news here, so you can look forward to that. I know that I am, because I'm just dying to find out more. I would love to know what those other 10 NES games are. I would love to know more info about the classic game offerings, how they work, how we get to, I guess you can't see, but I'm doing air quotes right now, keep these games. If we get to keep these games. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. But I thought it'd be fun to talk a little bit about speculation and that sort of thing, especially since it is close and we literally know almost nothing. So Nintendo, get on it. All right, well that was a fun little bit of speculation, a little bit fact, kind of educated guessing. Anyways, let's move on to this week's game review. This week I decided to review the Mega Man Legacy Collection 1 and 2. This is different from the Mega Man 7 review that will be coming at a later time. That is just an individual game. This review is about the two collections as one whole package. And I reviewed these on the Nintendo Switch. I struggled a bit with how to review the Mega Man Legacy Collection. Not only is there a lot of content packed into these two collections, but how do I review multiple games as one? I considered reviewing each individual game, and someday I may, but for the purposes of this, I reviewed the entire collection as a whole. The formula for Mega Man never really changed for any of the games in this collection. One thing that did, though, was the level of difficulty. The Blue Bomber's original outing is punishing, near impossible by any standard. That changed with each iteration, getting easier and easier until Mega Man 9. To offset the difficulty, the folks at Capcom added the ability of save state and a handy rewind function. It was really hard not to reach for the rewind, especially during some of the final stages. That's actually part of the joy of Mega Man, learning the patterns and completing each level with better and more precise timing and platforming. These games still have all of that. They are pretty much the original incarnations, frame rate slowdowns and all, but with a few modern additions. The level design seemed to feel fresh, even across 10 titles. There was a little recycling, but for the most part, it all felt new. Some of these games I played for the first time, and it was a blast getting to know them. It was also amazing to see how Mega Man evolved, then devolved, over time. Whether it was the addition of new abilities like the charge or slide, or better graphics, Capcom all seemed to find a way to keep me engaged and wanting to play through just one more continue. The controls for Mega Man are incredibly simple. Most of these games were released on the NES, with only a couple exceptions, so there were serious hardware limitations. For the most part, you only use two buttons, one to jump and one to shoot, plus the stick to move. On the Switch, there is no D-pad, and playing with the individual buttons just didn't feel right, so I'd use the stick, which these games were not designed for, and this was apparent in some of the more intense periods of these games. Thankfully, the controls are customizable, but with only a couple buttons, it didn't make it super important to do so. This is clearly a love story to Mega Man and his roots, packing 10 titles across two collections plus a whole bunch of bonus content. The games are near pixel perfect on the Switch. you can actually play pixel perfect recreations or dial it right up to full 16:9 widescreen. I prefer to keep it in its original form because you got some pretty cool artwork options as borders around the screen. The additional content is probably the best part of these packages. Each collection includes challenge modes and online leaderboards, which are great for bragging rights, but I found myself spending hours combing through all the historical facts, art, music, and more. On the whole, both of these collections are great, and at the price point it's hard not to just buy them both bundled. That being said, the real gem is the first collection. Those games have stood up better, and I felt that was a more cohesive collection. Dr. Wily certainly lives up to that name, because he's incredibly wily over the course of 10 games, always finding new and inventive ways to get into trouble. The Blue Bomber fights and defeats many robot masters over the course of 10 games, earning a special weapon each time. The fun part is figuring out which weapon is effective against which boss. So, does it still hold up? I actually struggled with this because even though this is a new game, it's still a collection of retro titles. So in the end, I decided to keep this category. So does it still hold up? Yes, at least in part. Mega Man 9 and 10 are newer and great homages to its roots, but some of the Blue Bomber's other outings just haven't stood the test of time. Funny enough, I found the earlier games in the franchise have stood up better than the 16-bit era entries. So, the final verdict. For gameplay, it was nostalgic and pretty much a pixel perfect re-release, so I gave it an 8. The controls, although simple, the analog stick really wasn't the best, even though they were customizable, so I gave it a 7. The presentation, beautiful borders, and the bonus content alone was worth getting the collection for, so I gave it a 9. Story, typical Mega Man fare, but the Robot Masters were quite inventive. I still gave it a 7. And does it hold up today? Yes and no. Mega Man 7 and 8 are kind of meh, and the earlier iterations are actually still a lot of fun, so I give it an 8. That brings Mega Man Legacy Collection 1 and 2's total to 7.8. Well, that's it for another episode of Nifty Ninty. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's show. It was a pretty packed show. Some really cool news, I thought anyways, as well as a few notable releases, Wario Ware Gold and Salt and Sanctuary leading those. I would recommend those if you plan on picking up any games this week. Also, our review of Mega Man Legacy Collection 1 and 2. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you would like to help me out, as I am a one-man show creating all this content because I love video games and I want to share that love with you guys, please do subscribe to my Patreon. You can find it at www.patreon.com/tunaentertainment. Also, please give me a follow on Twitter. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me. That is at tunaent_official, and that is the number 2, NAENT_official. That's Twitter. Also, if you enjoyed these videos, please do hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications so you know when I post all sorts of videos. It's not just this podcast. I also have another podcast, but you can look forward to videos of event coverage as well as top 10s and maybe one day in the future some travel videos and a whole bunch of other things. And you can also find me on iTunes. This podcast and my other podcast, The Xbox Zone, are both up on iTunes, so you can feel free to subscribe there. Make sure you never miss an episode. That way, then you can take us on the go, just like your Nintendo Switch. Also, if you want, you can check out the website, www.tunaentertainment.com. And, as always, that's it for this week, and stay nifty.